So, last night we were treated to a fresh look at some Soulframe gameplay, 75 minutes of it. Digital Extreme's next free game. What's up, you beautiful feckers? How you all doing? So, it was a long session with Steve on Twitch of the Prelude build to Soulframe. Now, the Prelude build is basically the pre-alpha build that's being tested right now by some very lucky gamers, which means a lot of this is more than likely subject to change. Oh, before I go any further, please remind me to chapter this in case I haven't, because I'm absolutely useless at remembering that. Also, it was streamed on Twitch, and Twitch compression hates foliage in a game, which means footage can look very pixelated on stream on Twitch. Just so you know, if you're watching this footage now, because that's where I've taken it from. It's taken from Twitch. But I have tried to tidy it up. Now, it was a new player account on a fresh Soulframe build that had just gone live, and Steve brought us around the game with his shaman type setup while fighting higher level enemies, throwing his sword around at those enemies, answering questions about the game from chat, and even running dungeons full of level 20 enemies while he was only level 2, which ended exactly how you would expect, corpse running. So I'm just going to recap a little bit over the footage of Steve playing in the background. I will leave a full link to Steve's stream VOD in this video's description if you want to watch all 75 minutes of it, because it was very interesting. But I will give a very brief recap of what Soulframe is. Now, if you already know what Soulframe is, you can of course skip this chapter. That is, if I've remembered to chapter it. But Soulframe is described as a mirror universe kind of to Warframe, offering a fantasy setting with slow-paced melee combat and magic of course as well, which is the opposite to Warframe's fast-paced sci-fi action. However, Steve did also mention that archery and bows and ranged attacks would also be something that will be added to the game. But it is a free multiplayer game like Warframe, or you can play it solo if you're friendless. So it's Warframe, only fantasy based instead of sci-fi, and it's slower. It's also very evident that this game has taken heavy inspiration from other games. It is not on a difficulty level of what, say, Elden Ring or any of the Souls-like games are. Soul in the name for this game is referring to the ancestral spirits that will give you your powers. Powers that are going to function in a similar way to how they do in Warframe, but it does seem to have taken heavy inspiration from that genre of game. Now, the game takes place on Midrath Island, featuring a dynamic, open-ish world with plenty of enemies, procedural dungeons, and the Prelude build, of course, is just a very small segment of that open world. And as the game evolves, that map or that open world will apparently get much bigger. Now, your base of operations is the Nightfold. It is the player hub with the big tent. It serves as your personal hub area for inventory management, crafting, and progression, evolving from a single tent to apparently a bustling village full of your ancestors as you find them within the world. The combat style includes dodging, parrying, performing combos, and of course stealth and backstabbing, because it is a slow-paced game to what Warframe is. And if I'm being honest, from the footage we've seen up until now, the combat does look a little bit rigid or a little bit stiff in places, and could do with being a little bit more fluid. It kind of reminds me of some of the Deviri combat in Warframe with our operator. However, if you compare this combat to earlier footage that we've seen, say, long before even TennoCon, there is definitely huge improvements being made in terms of combat. Now, build variety for your characters will revolve around virtues like Courage, which is the fighter archetype, Spirit, which is the magic archetype, and of course Grace, which apparently is the assassin one, so around stealth. And the pacts are ancestral spirits, which will grant abilities similar to Warframe's class system. Now, the surface of Midrath Island will apparently shift, which will lead to dungeons appearing and disappearing throughout the game. So while the open world seed for the game, Steve said, will be the same each time, the dungeons will constantly change. Maybe they're going to be on a timer like some of the stuff in Warframe, we don't exactly know. Now, these dungeons apparently will offer different challenges, including environmental hazards, temporary ability modifiers from wandering souls, like what we seen at TennoCon, where you found that one ancestor in the middle of the dungeon who gave you a time-limited kind of exalted blade ability, which looked really cool as well. Now, your character will have virtues, which are your 3 core stats: Courage, Spirit, and Grace. These will shape your character's build, of course, and the pacts with the ancestral spirits will provide unique abilities and skills. But during Steve's stream last night, we did get a fresh look at the Fey Ancestral Spirit Pact, which is basically that little bird we've seen up until now in TennoCon, which gives you the 3 abilities, which were Be Stone, which turns enemies to stone, so it does exactly what it says on the tin, which then allows you to either shatter them or crowd control them. There was Mend Mist, which puts down a mist apparently, and damaging enemies inside that mist will then heal you and your teammates. And then there was Phantom Flock, which is the ultimate ability which summons a flock of birds which attack and stagger enemies from the look of the footage. But his shaman setup also had some virtues and some instincts which helped with regenerating spirit and life. I think the wording on some of this is a little bit confusing for some of the items, especially the virtues. Their descriptions seem to be just poems, like the Grace of Grass description, which was basically wind of waves, these seas of green, these plains serene, the hidden sun. Fucked if I know what that means. Forechild's Courage did mention thorn-barked warriors, so maybe thorns or barkskin, so that enemies will take damage whenever they hit you. We got a look at the game's corpse walk mechanic for when you die and have to run back to your body in order to revive it, which reminds me heavily of World of Warcraft, which I know plenty of games have that mechanic, but for me, I've played a lot of Warcraft, so that's what I'm kind of connecting it to. Now, there are death shrines in certain areas of the map, and once you interact with that death shrine, it allows you to run back to your body if you die in that area. And apparently, if you get to the revive, you will also have a boost in health once you accept the revive. He mentioned that bows and ranged weapons, like I said earlier, are something that are going to be added. We know that there are mounts from what we've seen in the TennoCon stream. We know that there is character creation, quite diverse character creation. There is gathering and crafting. It will be cross-play, cross-save on launch as well. We know that we will form pacts with the ancestral spirits, which will provide us with unique abilities like the snapping of the fingers with the Fey bird one. He also mentioned how the game will more than likely be PC only for the first year of its development, like what Warframe was, so PC players are basically going to be the guinea pigs. Steve did also mention that Soulframe is built on a lot of the same tech as what Warframe uses. We did see a chat window pop up at one point, and it's pretty much the chat window from Warframe. Now, during the stream, we seen Steve finding one of the ancestors for your character called TUVALKANE, who once found will then show up in your Nightfold in your player base as a blacksmith. A blacksmith that will create weapons for you. Now, the animation for the blacksmith spawning into the Nightfold was kind of cool as well. So just like Warframe, you're going to need to gather resources from possibly the open world, maybe dungeons, and possibly even bosses in order to craft some of these weapons. Now, Tuval had 3 weapons to begin with and seemed to be just starter weapons by the description of them. To begin with, she crafts a halberd, which is a rusty polearm, apparently that's not very sharp. There is a split sword, which sounds like dual-wielded blades, and then Steve later confirmed that it was actually dual-wielded blades. There is a rook blade, which is both club and spear. These weapons, of course, had build timers like Warframe, 10 hours in order to build a weapon, which means more than likely there's going to be some form of a skip with real money or a platinum variant within Soulframe, whatever their version of platinum is going to be. Again, this was all pre-alpha footage, and it is a long way away from release, this game. Possibly even another full year or more. We know that TennoCon next year is a 2-day event. There is a lot of speculation that one of the days is going to be Warframe, with maybe the second day being Soulframe, because it is a bit unusual for them to have 2 days. Normally it's just a 1-day event, so who knows? I guess we won't know until July when TennoCon rolls around. But again, the link to the full stream for Steve is in this video's description if you want to watch all 75 minutes of it, in case I've left anything out. Let me know what you think of Soulframe, if you're looking forward to it or not, what you thought of the footage. Have a great day, have a great week, and as always, thanks for watching.